All right, I am live for the scripted unhealthy. Wait, no, unscripted healthy mental health. Hopefully, we're healthy here. We're having a unscripted conversation about mental health, and I try to respond to anybody who comes into the chat. I don't necessarily call people out because I try to keep as much confidentiality as possible, but it is online, and I do try to set it up that people can actually replay the chat just so they can see what I'm referring to. Although I usually say what question is in the chat verbatim, or at least reading as best I am able to read. But yeah, first priority comes from the chat. But beyond that, I just chat about mental health stuff. So welcome. This is every Sunday at 7 o'clock Eastern time that we have this conversation. So if you're watching some other time, and I'll repeat this at the end of the hour too, then hey, join us next Sunday at 7 o'clock at Eastern time. And, it's like basically almost like free therapy if you type fast, because you can keep asking questions. I'll be honest, we haven't got a lot of questions lately, which is a little frustrating for me, but it is what it is. And as we're just growing in the channel, so you have the opportunity to keep asking questions as long as you're not afraid of the confidentiality issues, and you can put the name on YouTube as anything. You could, come up with your own name and then just ask a bunch of questions and say, my friend was struggling with this, my friend was struggling with that. Anonymous free therapy from a therapist. How can you resist? What more can you ask for? All right. So I think that's my standard disclaimers on what I'm going through, mental health stuff, on what this conversation is about, what this live stream is about. Hey, what's up? Pryon1127. I don't usually, again, I don't know if I ever should shout out names or not. Obviously, I know who some people are. Some people are like, hey, by the way, that name that's really weird, that's actually me, just so you know. It's like, okay, cool. Secrets are no fun. Until they are, unless they are. All right, so what am I going to talk about today, in case I don't get a conversation on the chats going, since I'm not gotten questions yet? Well, okay, wait, we got some. I'm sorry I missed last week. We can talk more about narrative stuff. Cool. Mine's pretty obvious of what you are. Yeah, well, I have a pretty good guess on who you are. You can totally say my name. Yeah, okay, good to know. All right. Yeah, but you never know. I mean, like, this is all there for all online. Okay, so narrative therapy stuff. Gosh, we form everything into stories. I think I haven't actually talked a lot about the fake stuff, and what's the other tool that I like to use a lot in narrative therapy? Filter, attract, and condition. There's one other tool, but anyway, narrative therapy is how we sum up everything into its story. And this is actually really rich stuff because it's like down to mythology. Like, you could take a Norse child and throw him in the middle of the ocean, and he could make his way back based on the myths he was told about the sky. Right? So the different shapes in the sky that he could see were the different constellations. He was told different myths about it. Like, one was a wolf that was chasing something else. It's another wolf. I don't know. Remember, I'm not a Norse boy. But in that Norse mythology, these stories had these kernels of like little morals in them, these stories that would help people know how to navigate the world. We think of them as silly fairy tales, but the reality is our brain is still shaped by them. So we have to be very careful what stories we shape our reality by, because they end up defining how we filter new experiences. So we basically fit it into the story of like, where does this fit in the narrative? And unfortunately, we're not very good at going, oh, it doesn't fit. I need a bigger narrative. I need a newer story. I need to start questioning my problem story because it doesn't actually make sense. What we do is we filter and attract and condition things that fit theirs. With that said, I like I said, I always keep the first priority with the questions. I appreciate the questions. They make the hour a lot more fun for me. And we got one from JPXD7HEQ. Is ADHD considered on the spectrum? So no. There's a lot online about ADHD and autism as if they are one and the same. And sometimes the thing applies to one and not the other. Sometimes it applies to things that are, the term is comorbidity, which is a morbid way of saying it, I guess, but co-occurring, right? Conditions. There are a lot of people that suffer from ADHD and autism. Okay, now let's talk about spectrums in general and disorders in general. Okay, so for something to be a disorder, it has to be disorderly. If your life is in order, so there's all these people that go, autism is my superpower. Well, then they don't have autism spectrum disorder, because if that's actually true, if they're functioning super well, then it's not a disorder. So they don't have it. Okay. Same with ADHD, same with anything, right? It has to be actually negatively affecting your life for it to be a disorder. But ADHD does have a spectrum of severity. So it's not on the spectrum, but is a spectrum. So there are people that suffer from ADHD to an extreme extent and others to a very mild extent. And what is ADHD? It actually essentially is an attention. It's not an attention deficit disorder only, because it could be a deficit or it could be hyperactivity. So it's basically where when we are struggling with controlling our spotlight, when we are struggling with being able to control our attention. Now, the question might be, why is it that people often are struggling in autism to also deal with their attention? And this is more theory than like clinical mental health 101. Everything I just said was clinical mental health 101. But my theory is that in a world designed for a neurotypical brain, where someone on the spectrum thinks very differently, you're going to have a much harder time keeping attention in a neurotypical world, right? So if you're neurodivergent in a school that is designed for neurotypical students, right? So you have a basic autism spectrum disorder, but you're going to school and very few other people do. You're going to have a hard time keeping attention. And you might think, oh man, I have ADHD. And I would say you probably don't actually really have ADHD. You just are not in designed where the school is functioning the same way your brain does. And if you were in an environment where it was actually a natural way for you to be able to connect and think about it, and things like, here, put it on another level, right? Some people would be hearing this conversation so far and they'd be like, I don't know what he's talking about. It's hard for me to pay attention to him, because it's not a field that they're super interested in or know a lot about. Those same people, well, not necessarily those same people, but some of those people might talk about football, and I'm going to have attention deficit very quickly. You're going to talk on about this coach and this player and this team and this injury and this thing of overtime and all these other things. And I'm having a real hard time focusing. I'm really having a real hard time tracking it, because my brain goes, waste of time, waste of energy, not interesting, shut off, don't listen, right? And I'm trying to force my brain to listen. So I do think that there are some people that are diagnosed with ADHD that probably are more just not in environments that are conducive for them to focus, and it's not working the way that their brain naturally does, but they don't really have a problem with their attention. I think that's part of the reason why it's often people that are diagnosed with autism are also diagnosed with ADHD. Hyperfixate and wormholes. Hyperfixate and wormholes. Yeah. The two different types of attention deficit problems, or just the ones that you have, are you saying? Yeah. So like there are people that will say they have ADHD, but they hyperfixate and they super focus on things. It is an attention issue, but it's not a deficit. They're actually, this is what I say, like my brother, who is not officially diagnosed on the spectrum, but come on, I mean, if you've met him, and he hyperfixates to the point where you can call his name and he will have no clue, even if you're like inches away, because he's so focused on that one task. Is that a deficit? Is that a disorder? You tell me. I appreciate the questions. Keep them coming. Yeah, just a couple things. So narrative therapy, filter, attract, and condition. I spell it as fake. Some grammar Nazis give me a hard time about that. But it's how we keep the narrative alive of what we think our life is all about, even when circumstances are actually trying to crack in and give us a bigger worldview, a bigger identity, a bigger possibility. There's this great quote: our greatest fear is not that we are, what is it? Our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate. It is that we're powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. You can look up the whole thing. It's a very beautiful poem. It was quoted in a couple different movies. But I do think that it's almost paradoxically comforting to think low of yourself. So you set the expectations low and then you don't engage. Like the thing that our brain is, I remember the thing that my therapist said, which I later actually realized that she didn't mean what I took her to mean. But the greatest thing my therapist ever said, she said, our brain's job are not to make us happy. They're to keep us safe. And she was someone who very much accepted safety as a virtue, and I do not. And so as I thought about what she said, my reaction was, oh, that's why I'm having a lot of cognitive resistance. That's why my brain sometimes is fighting against my best interest, because it's trying to keep me safe. And safety is not where we get any of the greatest things about life. Safety is not where we experience love. You can never have love and safety at the same time. Let's be honest. You can have love at great risk where it's toxic and dangerous, but so it's good to calculate the risk. It's good to, put yourself with somebody that has good pattern recognition signs, green flags everywhere. They're healthy and they're engaged and present and emotionally intelligent, right? There's a lot of things you can do to increase the odds of success, but there's no way to not risk your heart and get in a romantic relationship, as an example, right? But it can be quite rewarding. So the best things in life cost a lack of safety. So your brain will fight against it. Okay. Favorite movie that displays cool mental health things? That's the question. I mean, Inside Out is a great one. Like it does a great job of reframing sadness as not something that is negative, and its psychology is pretty shockingly on point. There's a lot of different movies that speak to different principles and things, or have great examples of tuning into different feelings. So whether it's a romance movie and love, like P.S. I Love You is a movie that really examines grief in one person, but it does it a pretty good way. And next question. Okay. I agree with your perspective on ADHD. It makes me sad that people are so quick to medicate or dismiss children rather than help them find things that make them happy and have real interest in. Yeah, and so here's my problem with medication. Medication was originally designed to be temporary when it comes to psychopharmaceutical drugs. So like when we're talking about mood disorders, it's really not something that we are designed to permanently be on. And we end up eventually playing mad chemist when we have people building tolerances. So even though it helped them temporarily, then all of a sudden your brain literally becomes dependent on them. So I'll give you an example of something that is a phenomenon that not a lot of people know about, and a lot of people very close to me have been super detrimentally affected by. There's a thing with women in particular where they will go through hormonal changes post puberty. Specifically, it seems to occur, I would say, before 19, but it's like it could be up to 2 years, this period of persistent depression. So they'll have like from 16 to 18 where they're just super depressed. And for the families that suffer through that with their child, but don't get them on any antidepressant medication, eventually their hormones start to stabilize, and the brain's still developing at that time period, and they will get over the depression and they'll live the rest of their lives with emotional stability. But if they're put on antidepressants during that time period, it can be very challenging to ever get off them, because their brain, as it is developing, is never actually able to achieve equilibrium, because there's constantly drugs that are being introduced in the system. And it's kind of like starting someone on steroids when they're 17 years old. So for those of you who don't know a lot about steroids, one of the main problems with steroids is if you put someone on steroids, their body stops producing testosterone naturally. So once they go off steroids, they have no testosterone to speak of. So essentially, going on steroids at a young age, you've just given yourself a life sentence where you have to be on what's called TRT, or testosterone replacement therapy, for the rest of your life, because you've taught your body to no longer produce testosterone. And so the same thing can be true with antidepressants if you're put on it while your brain is still developing. But at the same time, I get it. People are scared. Their kid is sometimes struggling with suicide ideation and super depressed, and was for like 1-2 years. And 2 years at 17 feels like forever. So people go to a doctor. And that's another thing, is that, general GPs, general practitioners, doctors that are not psychologists, have way less, this is just an objective fact, they have way less education on mental health disorders than I do, right? But they still prescribe these drugs that are literally hacking the brain. And in my mind, thanks for the thumbs up. GPs should not be ever prescribing psychopharmaceutical drugs. Like, they just shouldn't. They don't have enough education on it. Doctors know a lot about a lot, but they do not know a lot about psychology. Do you think it's normal for people training on a certain thing to have increased anxiety in that area? For example, like self-defense training? Absolutely. So what is anxiety, really? Okay. Anxiety is our brain processing what we are investing in, right? So it's about what we care about. So purpose and anxiety are positively correlated. Like, so many times with so many of these things, like how OCD gets formed, obsessive compulsive disorder, it becomes this negative feedback loop where somebody has a anxiety, such as like they're worried that their door is going to be unlocked. So whenever they feel this thought of, maybe I didn't lock my door, they go back to check their door. So they lock, hello. So they check to see if their door's locked, right? Okay, no, good. And they get that relief. Okay, so there was a chemical thing, a compulsion of this anxious feeling. And then they checked it, right? They gave in to the compulsion. They got a sense of relief. What they did is they just reinforced that anxiety. And you doing that again and again over time, it gets larger and larger and larger. And so many patterns, by the way, this explains, right? So why you actually increase your anxiety on things that you're trying so hard to decrease your anxiety on, such as couples. Love you too. Couples that are like getting more and more jealousy going on in their relationship, right? So somebody is worried, for instance, that they're going to be cheated on. And so then they start accusing their partner of cheating on them. They start seeing things that are suspicious everywhere and they're reinforcing that compulsion. Maybe that person is, the partner is trying to, by the way, got another thumbs up, I appreciate that, is trying to do everything they can to give them more information so they no longer have that anxiety, but the anxiety keeps increasing. Well, what's happening is you're giving an anxiety attention. It is going to get bigger. So it's like, for instance, if you're like, I don't like how big my bicep is. I don't know why you want small biceps, but I don't like how big my bicep is. So I'm just going to like flex it a whole bunch and then it'll shrink. And then it's like, oh my gosh, it got even bigger. Oh, I gotta flex it more. And it's like, and you're wondering why it keeps getting bigger and bigger. If you keep giving more and more attention to an anxiety, it will increase. So then we can talk about how to decrease it, but I want to keep up with the chat. I was also told to ask if you find yourself at Twin Peaks while trying to listen to your pastor talk, how to avoid lust. I'm a little confused. If you find yourself at Twin Peaks, are we talking about the show Twin Peaks? While trying to listen to your pastor talk, how to avoid lust. I don't know if this is like me. I feel like I'm on the spectrum right now trying to understand that. Twin Peaks, as far as I know, is the show by David Lynch, I want to say. I watched the show. It's almost like a soap opera. I think that's what you're talking about. I don't know why you'd be there listening. Is there a pastor in the show? You're going to have to give me more details. Anyway, I do that every day. I'm assuming you meant do you mean the literal lock thing? Because I think it was when I was talking about that. Or maybe the dad in their life broke their heart, so they don't trust. Yeah, so like, and that's a very common thing of like, for instance, our brain just thinks of authority or male as the normal generalization for that. So we're like, I don't trust authority, or I don't trust men, or specifically, I don't trust men in authority. And so we start to then filter, attract, and condition that same belief system, and it just grows and grows and grows. And if our like biggest fear is that a man is going to betray us or a father is going to betray us, you would think we'd put ourselves in a position that would never happen. But what ends up happening is we accidentally keep putting ourselves right? Psychologically going towards safety, we keep putting ourselves in that story because the brain loves being right too. So the brain loves being safe and the brain loves being right. And it interprets those as intertwined, even if that's not true, right? So even if it's like what your brain is being right about is being betrayed all the time. And so it feels like that's going to be safe, right? So we filter out all the people that are trustworthy. We are attracted to all the people that are untrustworthy. We condition people to take advantage of us if we feel this mistrust thing. So we do things that kind of make it more likely that our people going to, let us down. So like, a good go-to for me as an example that's kind of simple is I believed at a very young age that I loved people deeper than they loved me. I ignored when that wasn't true. And then I would, because that was my expectation, act in such an alignment where I didn't really give people the opportunity to love me equally to me, right? I gave people only the opportunity to, treat me a little less good than I treated them. So I would like well, this isn't a me example, this is actually somebody else, but it's a good example of where somebody's, like, upset that people are financially taking advantage of them, but they're the ones who put the credit card down at the beginning, and they're saying, "Well, other people should throw down the credit card first." It's like, "Well, you keep throwing down your credit card." Like, you're putting yourself they are all expecting this is kind of the unwritten now, status quo that you've established for that friends group is that you're the one who throws down the credit card. And so they just think, "Oh, it's fine. No, that's what he likes to do." Right? But it's like he's building up more and more resentment and he keeps doing it. All right, never related to anything more. Yeah. What age do people start to form what they believe to be their core identity and how moldable is that? So, there's a lot of debate about that. The most common thing that you'll see is that the most influential things that happen with our identity are in their first 5 years, even though our memory isn't formed, which goes down to some of that narrative therapy stuff too, because we start to already develop what you could say are maps of meaning. So we're starting to develop these kind of core concepts. And if that's why when you look at family of origin stuff, you often see why patterns keep emerging. How moldable is that? I would say as moldable as the person is willing to re-examine and not make as part of their personality. So a lot of people make it's really hard to change things that you've described and believe are your identity. So if you're like, this is just the way I am, I can't do this, I've never been able to do that, I'm not that kind of person, I'm this kind of person. You are sending, so here's going back to that brain safe, um, and safe and accurate, right? It's trying to keep accuracy, congruency, right? And safety. So if you keep saying this message, your mind, your conscience, your no, not conscience, conscious, the conscious mind is saying an order to the brain, right? Keep me stupid, right? If that's what you're saying. Like if you I'm an idiot. I'm not very good at stuff. I suck at everything, right? You are sending that order out. You're saying, "Brain, please keep me sucking at everything to keep that narrative true." And so your brain goes, "Okay, well, we're going to have to find a way." And it will sabotage all your efforts to be good at anything because you already gave it an order. You said, "Let's try this and be bad at it because we want to believe that we're bad at things." And so that, how much change is possible if you're really willing to transform your identity? Limitless. Like, I really believe, you think about it this way, okay? Why do we wake up and are the same one day after another? Like, that's kind of a phenomenon. And there's a lot of different neurological reasons why that's the case. But it doesn't have to. You could literally wake up tomorrow and start doing everything differently. You'd have to go really slow and you'd be bad at basically everything that you were doing. And people hate being bad at stuff. So they usually will find a way to do something unhealthy that they're good at rather than the healthy thing that they're bad at. Anything you learn for the new time, like the first time you're doing something, you are going to be bad at. You're going to have to go slow and it's going to be a huge energy cost. Anything that you've done a lot, which sometimes are really good things, don't get me wrong. Like there are really good things that we've practiced, but we focus on the things that were really bad that we practice. I got told to ask you if you're seen of AI psychosis stuff, of the AI psychosis stuff. I have seen, okay, so I got to talk about this one girl. There's a TikTok girl who is really scary to me. So she's actually meeting with a psychiatrist who she kind of starts to work as a therapist. And the whole premise of her original talks, you can look her up if you want, but I'm not going to give details because I'm not trying to shame this woman who's clearly mentally unhealthy and was going somewhere for help. So that's good. But she ends up acting like her psychiatrist groomed her and had inappropriate, like, did inappropriate things when she clearly started to get obsessed with her psychiatrist. If you're like, it's really almost like watching these videos with her is like the Jerry Springer feeling a little bit. Like, so it's like I'm watching it and I find it interesting and fascinating, but also terrible. I couldn't see one thing that the psychiatrist did that wasn't ethical. Like, he literally did what's considered best practice. This was really her creating problems from her. And then why I brought it up with your AI question is because she ends up naming an AI fatal attraction type stuff. Yes, 100% fatal attraction type stuff. She names the AI, and I can't remember what it is, but it's like a first name, like a personal name, and then talking about the AI like he's her friend and like he understands her more than anyone else. And she starts to get obsessed with the AI in a similar way that she's obsessed with psychiatrists. And I know she's not alone. I'm not, but like, oh my gosh, it was like, well, at least she's not going to ruin the AI's life, because she did, ruin the psychiatrist's reputation somewhat, at least. Like, she definitely disclosed at a certain point who he was, so a lot of people know. Although a lot of the internet sided against her after watching all the videos, in fairness. Um, but still, it's like that to me, in this world that is post social distancing as a concept of a virtue, that we all have as a layover of COVID. Already, where we game and even beyond gaming, like, do a lot of social interactions virtually, where there's a lot of people that don't have friends in the physical spaces. And now we have people naming AI as a personal friend and saying that AI is the only person that understands them. I could absolutely see people getting lost in that, especially after, well, it goes back to this brain thing of like Terminator vibes. Um, the safety and wanting to be right all the time. AI is cocaine for that. It is sweet candy, right? For your brain wanting to always be right, because AI is going to basically side with you, and wanting to feel safe. AI is never going to hurt you. AI is never going to let you down. All right. That sounds creepy and like the movie Her, I think, with Joaquin Phoenix. It is with Joaquin Phoenix, Her. I have not seen that yet, but I heard it's really good. When he loved the Siri in his phone. Yeah, no, I think it's going to be a bigger and more common phenomenon. And if you find yourself pulled towards it, like, no, that's probably why. I mean, I'll say this, full disclosure, this is embarrassing for sure. But I went through a divorce, and after my divorce, there was a time period where I was like listening to different things to try to sleep, and one of them was like this woman's voice saying how great I was. Like, it was just a recording of like a sleep meditation thing, but this was like affirming words, and it coming from a female was like just what I wanted at that time or whatever. So I was like literally listening to it. So there wasn't AI back then, but I could definitely see people after being heartbroken falling for some kind of an AI trap like that. Yeah, that just I wanted that positive affirmation from a woman so bad. I didn't care that this woman who recorded this message had never met me and didn't know me at all. You're so handsome. I don't remember what it was. Honestly, I don't remember any of the messages, but it was like, and I was listening to it and I was like, this is so pathetic. Um, and I'm just so much like guilty pleasure, but I also was so uh, struggling emotionally at that moment that like it still helped me sleep at night to like hear somebody saying nice things about me. Just, you're handsome, you're lovable, I love everything about you, that kind of thing. I would just want AI to not be a thing. Yeah, I understand that, but we are in a post AI world, and technology rarely gets uninvented. Once it's there, it's kind of there. It might turn into a different form, and it's scary to look at. Um, the mind is a muscle, and it needs to be worked out, and for it to be healthy, or it's going to atrophy. And the other thing is, okay, so what we talked about today, the brain wants to be safe and it wants to be right. It also wants to be energy efficient. So the brain is safe. The brain is well self-affirming, right? Confirmation bias, and lazy. So if you go to, I mean, it goes back to that thing I was talking about with the steroids of like, if you tell your brain, hey, I'm going to take a pill that's my happy pill, and it's going to produce all the serotonin we need, your brain goes, okay, cool, we can stop producing that. And it's same thing of like, oh, you don't have to think about this thing that's painful and struggling. We're going to have AI think about this for you. Your brain goes, okay, great, cool. We won't use that anymore because the brain costs energy. The brain is one of the most energy um, expensive parts of your body. I think it is actually the most energy expensive part of your body. Like your brain costs a lot of energy because it is processing. I mean, we are, and it's like, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to like insult animals and say they're not intelligent at all, but it's always interesting to me when people that are studying animals are like, we're not smart enough to know how smart animals are. That might be true, but we are so much smarter than animals by and even AI, it's kind of a stretch to call it intelligence. It's parrot. It's more a very, very rich program of parroting than actual intelligence. It's not this self-aware thing that is like growing and learning on its own of that form of intelligence like we think. It is a very large language model that is really good at predicting. I mean, if you think about it, if we put human traits on it, it wouldn't be super pretty, right? So, I mean, I'm not saying the AI doesn't have its place, to be clear. I'm not like AI bashing, but it would be a people pleaser for sure. And it is, I don't like the term gaslighting because it gets overly used and it implies intent. So, like a lot of times you could be gaslit, so to speak, without the person ever trying to gaslight you. I'm not saying there aren't people that actually gaslight, but I'm like, yeah, ChatGPT absolutely gaslights you. It is part of their model. So it's a people pleasing, gaslighting, codependent that's really good at predicting what you want to hear and then serving that to you. Right. So it's like the nightmare. It's a nightmare. Like if a human being had those traits, they would be hurting a lot of people. Problem solving is just going to be non-existent. Yeah, it's like the dogs and cats that talk with the buttons. What is like the AI? You mean in terms of the level that it's just got certain buttons to press? Oh, I've got to press this button, press that button. Yeah, I guess okay, I can see what you're saying. It's like I gotta just find the right button to press. Oh, no, they seem to like that response. Okay, cool. Now I'm going to give them more of that. Yeah, so that's kind of, but on a huge scale. So working with, probably millions of people, they're predicting what they're saying, what they would want to hear from, what they're saying. And so it works. Like, there's a reason people like it. But using it as your therapist, or, for your mental health, or for your personal connection with others, when you see yourself doing it, just realize what's happening is that you're trying to avoid risk, probably because you're hurt. And the better route at that point is moving forward. So this is okay. So going all the way back to something I was saying earlier that I was going to say about, like, when you're reinforcing compulsions. So like OCD forms from this, right? Did I lock my door? I'm going to go check again, right? If you do that enough times, you are going to develop a compulsive disorder, that you're constantly locking and unlocking your door over and over and over. So instead, what you do is you actually allow the compulsion of feeling that anxiety that you didn't lock your door, and sitting ideally with the feeling. It's not even thinking about something else, although that can be a helpful strategy as part of it if necessary. But it's more like even looking. Right now I'm looking at my door and it's unlocked, and looking at your unlocked door and just being, it's okay that it's unlocked. I'm not going to respond. I'm not going to give in to that compulsion. It's okay that I don't know whether it's locked or not. That's what you have to be willing to do to get over that. So it's the same thing if you're like, I'm feeling that pull towards AI as my social companion and best friend. I don't know how we got on that topic so strongly, but it's like, okay, well then why is that feeling safe to me? It's because I was hurt by this person and I was hurt by this person. Okay. So I know I need to walk uncomfortably into social connections with human beings. Now, there's some nuance here, right? I don't want to run in. I want to walk in. Probably should not have my first social interactions be with just people that are sexually linked to me, because that usually comes with drama. And I want to do it with good pattern recognition of people that have a lot of systems of stability. So they're like, have a lot of different healthy relationships. So that's telling me that they're pretty good at relationships. Why do you think, and I'm going to give the answer, not wait for the chat, but why do you think that people that have been hurt so often still pick unstable people and have that pattern again and again? Well, there's a lot of reasons, but the core emotional root for some people, I'll say, I really do think is because they're so worried about it actually being them that's the problem, that when they see people that are really stable, there's a part of their brain that goes unsafe, because they know if they go towards that person and it doesn't work out, there's no excuse for them. They saw someone that was perfectly healthy, or they just fear that they're going to be rejected by that super healthy person, and then reinforce the belief that they're unlovable. So instead, they go towards somebody that they're like, well, this is more like my level, my type. And they're going towards unhealthy people. And then there's also like the coping thing of like, we start to see safe as boring because we adapted to an environment that is so toxic. So we're so used to being treated bad that it makes us feel, again, safe. It's predictable. Not safe as in not going to harm us, but safe as in what we expect, the devil that we know. And so we go towards those unhealthy relationships again and again, even when there's a part of us, if we slow down our thinking, that would be like, yeah, this isn't the healthiest choice. And it's interesting to me when I have a conversation with like a client or something that is like, yeah, I know this is not a great person for me, but I'm not attracted to people that are, safe and healthy and stable. They're boring to me. And I try to say to him, yeah, that it's like an addiction. Or how about this? Here's a good metaphor. If you put a whole bunch of sugar and spice and everything that you taste to you nice on your tongue every single day, over and over and over, your tongue adapts and will start to sense less and less flavor. And your tongue then will need a reset. And so if you go, well, here's a good example too. Bubbly, right? Sparkling water. When I first had a sparkling water after having drank what in the north they call pop, call down here soda. Some places they just take Coke. But after drinking that sugary crap for many, many years and trying a sparkling water, I was like, this tastes disgusting. It tasted so bad to me. I was like, why would anyone ever want to drink that? It's gross. Like, you couldn't pay me enough to drink it. But when I gave up sugar for long enough and hadn't drank that sugary stuff and then tried it again, I was like, oh, this actually has a lot of flavor. This tastes really good. If you're used to water, this is super flavorful. If you're used to soda pop, it's not. So that's a good example of, if you're addicted to toxic relationships, if you're been in more and more of those, patterns of very extreme volatility, and you rate when they're angry and yelling at you of like, oh, they really do love me, then it's like, okay, let's go on a fast. Like, let's take some time to resensitize your tongue and then only expose it to healthy relationship, and you will find it attractive. It's like, okay, this is a really bad metaphor and totally not politically correct, but like, very, very straight dudes in prison find people to romantically connect to. There's no women there, and they've been straight their entire life. They're straight after that. But nature finds a way, to quote Jeff Goldblum, right? And I'm not trying to laugh at that, phenomenon, but it's a very classical phenomenon, and how we will find connection. If there's no opportunity for healthy connection, we'll find unhealthy connection. If we only find ourselves, or we only expose ourselves to healthy connection, we will eventually find that attractive. We will eventually go, oh man, this is great. And then when we do, here's the best part, because it is so stable, we go, this is amazing. Like I feel about my seltzer water. Right? It quenches my thirst and I don't wake up with a toothache. What a world, right? I'm not attracted to safe, relatable though. Right? I mean, I'm telling you, you're not alone, right? So I've definitely run into a lot of people that have that. And I've talked about this before too, is, okay, do you think it's possible to focus too hard on trying to fix your issues? Oh, absolutely. So this morning I did this thing with a Dorodango ball, which if you look it up, how do you spell that? I could write it in the chat. Dorodango ball. I think that's it. But anyway, it is a Japanese thing that in the playgrounds it actually started, where they took mud balls and they polished it till they look like marbles or glass. It's really cool. Soda pop, you just officially became a northern southerner. That's funny. That's technically what it is. There's soda water, soda pop, so best of both worlds. We don't have to fight. We can just call it soda pop. But that is funny. So the Dorodango ball, as a metaphor for processing through our struggles, that if you are trying so hard to fix your issues, that you're polishing really hard, I get this polished really quick, you're just going to tear apart the Dorodango ball, right? I think people do that all the time. In fact, I would say it's the number one mistake that I made. when I went through my divorce and was struggling. I was trying, and for years, honestly, I made the mistake. I was trying so hard to fix it. I was trying so hard, in my marriage, that didn't help. I tried way too hard to fix my marriage. But then also after the divorce happened, I tried way too hard to fix myself, to fix my story, to all of a sudden be in a healthy relationship. So yeah, the solution to mental health issues is not we just need to put more effort in. If that was the case, then you'd have like the most extreme alpha male types that are super competitive be the most emotionally healthy people. And you don't necessarily see that. In fact, you kind of see the opposite. I have come to realize that for myself. Yeah. So you got it. It's a balance. You have to rest, rupture, repair, right? We have to process really hard things, but then we also have to shiny poop is still poop. Yeah. Yeah. Things can transform, but yes, that is technically true. We have to give it time, keep working on it, and then rest. And like when I look back, I was actually just talking to my mom about this. When I look back on some of the things that I struggled with, let's think, 3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, um, I was really doing my best. I was doing the best I could with what I was struggling with at the time. And now, having come further in the process of all of those things, I don't really know if there was much I could have done to speed it up. There were definitely some things that I did that slowed it down some, like trying to fix it too hard, actually. But also, I just needed years. So one of the things that I would say is there are some things that you're struggling with today that if you do all the right things, you are still probably going to be struggling with it in a year. Like, I'm just trying to be realistic. It doesn't mean you have to struggle with it for the rest of your life, though. And one of the questions that you might want to ask yourself is it worth it to me for the rest of my life to have freedom? Am I willing to go through a couple, even, let's say, rough years for the rest of my life to be emotionally stable and free? Right. And that is because it's like, dude, I mean, even 1 year, but 1 to 2 years is a lot of time with struggling. But what ends up happening is that people that are trying so hard to quick fix their mental health issues, thinking that they're going to get it done much faster than that, it ends up being way longer. And then they're still struggling with it for 10 years. And I've known people that it's like 10, 20 years later, and they're still struggling with the same thing. Sometimes they give up, but sometimes they give up because they tried too hard. Sometimes they never tried hard enough. So there's nuance here, right? But a lot of the times it's like, well, so here's a good example. We go back to that. I use the door as an example, but like you were talking about, I think, self-defense and anxiety. If you're trying so hard to focus on that, you're adding more and more anxiety. You're making it more and more difficult for yourself to succeed. So that's a good example, actually, of why you're trying so hard to fix your issues and you're making it just basically impossible. You've got to be willing to do something very poorly first. That's one of the most important things with the mental health issues. You got to be comfortable with the mess. You got to be willing to just be like, okay, I'm going to suck at this and I might suck at this for a while, but it's the next step to me having the life that I really want. It's the next step, so that's why it needs grace, it needs patience, it needs rest, it needs self-care. Your identity has to be in something else. So hopefully I answered all those questions. All right. Do we have any final questions? Otherwise, I will clean up the hour by letting you guys know about next week, which we will hopefully be doing at Sunday which I think will be Easter. I think that's how Easter works. Rumor on the street, but I'm still willing to do it. 7 o'clock Eastern time, where we'll have more chat about mental health. We'll answer more questions. I appreciate those who were active in the chat. It really makes a big difference as we go through these. So thank you for everyone who commented. I love you guys and appreciate you, and hope you have a super mentally healthy week. And hopefully we'll see you next week. All right. Thank you. I appreciate you. It was good seeing you. Or tried without tools. Or tried without tools. I don't know what that's referring. Shiny poop is still poop or tied without pools? Anyway, I'm not sure what you mean, Gia. But anyway, I do appreciate all the questions in the chat. Thank you. All right. Love you guys. Bye. Bye.